So welcome here. This is the part of the first problem which I am going to take it for the flexible budgeting from the budgets and budgetary control. Here the budgets and budgetary control have many type of budgets as we were already discussed. The first is flexible budget, then the cash budget, and the many type of expenditures budgets and many more. We'll start the first problem of flexible budget. I'm taking the problem from your presentation portion, and from that you can refer your first questions. The solution even also given in this particular part of problem, but simultaneously you refer your questions along with this information. So now you just consider the part of the information regarding this part of the problem solution. Let's see, the problem 1 is the flexible budget is concerned. The ask the question is very relative, that the informations which are given for 60% capacity at present, and on the basis of that 60% capacity they ask to find out the estimations of the overheads, estimations of the overhead expenses for the specific of 50%. So now we need to identify the comparisons of overhead understanding and overhead expenditures for the from the flexible budget methods. See, ultimately this flexible budget is all about to improve your efficiency as well as the capacity utilization. So here all overheads are given, different overheads are given, variable overheads are given, semi-variable overheads are given, and the fixed overheads are given. So we need to calculate of all the different overheads, making of total overheads, and on the basis of total overheads, the how much amount of expenditures are incurred per direct labor hours. This is a part of a little summary of this question. So before we are going to try to solve this problem solution, we need to identify which type of items are given in the questions and how we will proceed for the same. So let's see what would be the format of the concern of this flexible budget. We are preparing a flexible budget and see this format is particulars and the informations which are given of a different capacity. The capacity information is given that as 60%. So at present the company have a 60% capacity, and the company is estimated, try to find out the position at the level of 50%. So this is a structure of the solution of this particular problem. This is a pro forma of the solution of this problem. Let's see, we will start one by one all the informations, and here only overheads are given and only overheads is concerned. So we will looking after the only overheads part of these questions. So start with this first, variable overheads. And under this variable overheads, generally we know that which are the variable overheads. Material, labor, direct expenses are variable overheads. Here it is given indirect material. So indirect material, it's your first variable overheads, and which is given that 6,000 rupees at the level of 6,000 rupees it's given at the level of 60% capacity. See the other informations, how it would be relevant to find out at the level of 50%. It would be very easy. If it is 60%, 60,000, then in the case of a 50%, it would be a 5,000 rupees of variable overheads and indirect material. Now we will move to the next part of variable expenses, that is labor. And the labor cost is given at the capacity of 60%, it's 18,000. In case of it is 18,000, then how you can find out the labor expenses proportionately for the 50% capacity? So 18,000, it is at the level of 60%, and what would be at the level of it is 50%? It comes to around 15,000, not around, it's 15,000 rupees expenses in case of 50% capacity. So 50% capacity, the company have the part of their variable overheads, especially labor cost, is comes to 15,000. So you can just compare the situations. In case of the variable overheads, if the company is going down and company is decreasing their capacity, their proportionate expenses has been reduced proportionately only. So variable overheads is always incurred on the basis of a proportion of output increase and decrease. So if it is increased by 1 unit, proportionately expenses has been increased. If it is decreased by 1 unit, proportionately has been decreased. So now we will just make a total of the variable overheads. Total A. We'll just give our title, it's A. This is a variable overheads. 20,000 at the level of 50% capacity and 24,000 at the level of 60% capacity. After the variable expenditures are over, we will move for the next part, that is semi-variable expenses. Semi-variable expenses means the amount of expenditures are incurred on the basis of a certain level of output in some part. It means that when you are going to manufacturing a certain amount of units, the semi-variable expenditures are include variable as well as fixed. But it means up to certain level of production, the expenses are varied on the basis of the manufacturing of unit. But then after, the expenditures are fixed. So in this regard, in this case, if the situation is arrived like this, it is considered as a part of semi-variable expense. So semi-variable expenditures, we need to calculate it for this particular problem, and there are two semi-variable expense. The first is electricity. So for that, we'll just do it the working. Electricity expenses is given. The total amount of electricity expenses is given, that is 30,000 rupees. So 30,000 rupees electric expenses, just going to divide into two parts. Why it is divided into two parts? That is the reason. The one is a 40% of expenses and the other one is a 60% expenses. It means the 40% expenses are fixed. 40% expenses are fixed and the 60% expenses are variable. So here 40 and 60% expenses are to be calculated on the basis of this. Now see here, in case of 40% expenses, it comes to 12,000 rupees. So variable expenditures automatically identified, it's 18,000 rupees. So now semi-variable expenses, it needs to divide first according to the proportion, and that's why we did here the total amount of electricity expenses divided into two part, how much it's fixed and what is the variable amount. Now in case of a 60% capacity, their variable expenses comes to 18,000. So how it would be changed? Let's see. Now this is a position at the level of 60%. In case of variable cost, or you can see the electricity expenses at 50% capacity, इसमें variable cost. First is part of variable cost. In case of 18,000 increase at a 60% capacity, then what would be the possibility in case of a 50% capacity? It comes to 15,000. That means the electricity expenses is going to change only variable part, that is from 18,000 to 15,000, because of the capacity has been reduced from 60% to 50%. So electricity expenses in case of semi-variable, the semi-variable expenditures first divided into a two part. And why it is in two part? Because of the fixed and variable, both components has been included in this. So first we bifurcate, we differentiate the how much fixed and how much variable. Only variable expenses proportionately has been changed, so that we applied a formula and find out the variable cost in case of reduced capacity. Fixed cost is remain same, and that is 12,000. So in this case, the total amount of electricity expenses in case of 50%, it is 27,000. So here the next heading is semi-variable expenses or cost, and under that electricity expenses 30,000 rupees in case of 60%, but 27,000 rupees in case of 50%. Now This is electricity expense. Now another expense is given, that is repairs. See the repairs expenses, total amount of repairs expenses are given 3000 rupees. And again we need to bifurcate into two parts because of, as I mentioned, in case of semi-variable expenses always we need to divide it into a two part. Here it is given 80 and 20%. So 80% is fixed and 80% fixed cost comes to 2400 and 20% is variable. It comes to around 600. So 600 rupees it's a variable expenses and 2400 is a fixed expenses. Which expenses will be actually changed and on which expenses it would be affected? Only on a variable expenses. So now we will find out total cost of repairs in case of 50% capacity. First is variable cost and that is 600 in case of 60%. Then what would be in case of 50% comes to 500 and fixed cost is remain same, that is 2400. So the total amount of repairs expenses in case of 50% would be 2900. Why? Because of the bifurcations is very clear. 20% is a variable expenses on the basis of the amount of bifurcations given in the question. So 20% is a variable expenses. So in that case 60% capacity arrived, the variable expenditures of repairs is 600. So we applied a formula and find out how much in case of in 50% it comes to 500. Fixed cost was 2400 which remains same whether the capacity is changed or not, it remains same. So 2400 would be remain same. So 2400 is fixed in repairs, 500 is variable in repairs. Total amount of repairs expenses in case of 50% is 2900. So 2900 rupees repairs expenses and here it is 3000. So these are the two items is semi-variable cost. We have a two semi-variable cost and these are the semi-variable cost. The total of B, that is semi-variable cost, is like this. So this is the part of semi-variable expenses. Now moving to the next part and that is fixed cost. Here I just want to tell you that the variable expenditures are always varied on the basis of the capacity change. Semi-variable expenses also varied up to certain level of expenses. That means in the semi-variable we need to identify the how much portion is a variable concern and what is a fixed concern. So that's why we calculated here from semi-variable expenses, whatever the variable portions are there, that was changed according to the capacity and fixed is remain same. So after the find out the changes of variable expenses, fixed was what added and then it was written here as per the capacity. Now we'll see the fixed cost one by one. That one is depreciation. And the depreciation amount is given, that is 16,500 in case of 60% capacity. What would be the in case of 50% capacity? Same, remains same. Why it remains same? Because of it's a fixed cost. Here up to a certain level of changes and capacity moving, the amount of fixed cost is never changed. If it would be changed, then they will definitely mention in the problem that the what amount of fixed cost is going to change in case of the capacity is changed. Next is insurance, that is 4,500 rupees and that is also a fixed cost, remains same in case of both the capacity. Then next is salaries and salaries is given 15,000. It is also remains same 15,000 rupees. So this is your fixed cost part C. So the total of fixed cost C is comes to around, it's 36,000 rupees here and this is something, so 36,000 remains same because of the fixed cost is remain same for both the capacity. So 36,000 rupees fixed cost for both the category. Now we'll find out the total amount of overheads. Total overheads. And total overheads is total of A plus B plus C. Now the total, it comes to 85,900 rupees, the total amount is comes to 50% capacity, and now we'll find out for this it is 93,000 rupees total overheads in case of this category. Now the important thing, they ask in the first line itself only, ascertain overhead rate as per the different capacity, and that is why in your question it is given estimated direct labor hours. So now estimated direct labor hours would be considered here, and this labor hour will be helpful to find out what is your cost per labor hour. Here it is given 1,86,000 labor hours, that is for 60% capacity. So now first we'll have to identify the how many number of labor hours as per the 50% capacity, and that according to the calculation it comes to 1,55,000 labor hours. So the answer for overhead rates will be very easy. Overhead rates, how you can determine the 85,900 divided by 1,55,000 and 93,000 divided by 1,86,000. First, when you are going to divide 85,900 divided by 1,50,000, because of they ask to find out the overhead rates per hour, and that's why the total overhead has been divided by the estimated labor hour rate. So it comes to 0.55 per hour for 50% capacity, and then 0.50 in case of the amount of 60% capacity. So the valuations analysis say very clearly that if the company reduce their capacity, their cost per labor hour has been increased. In case of 60% capacity, the labor cost per hour it comes to 0.50. But here in case of the capacity has been reduced, their automatically cost per labor hour has been increased. So this is an analysis, and this is a way to solve the flexible costing method and flexible budget method, and that is why the company's efficiency can be evaluated from this part of calculation as well as the costing parameters. Here we already done it with the one problem regarding the flexible budget. And under that flexible budget problem, we were actually trying to observe what would be the changes of overheads in according to the capacity has been changed, and we will find out at last that overhead rates as per the per labor hour also. Here this is another type of problem where we can actually find out the flexible budget only, but here we are going to find out the profitability after according to the changes of different capacity. This is a problem where you can identify that what would be the comparisons of a different capacity of your total expenditures like variable, semi-variable and fixed expenses. When you are going to compare with the sales, what would be the contribution as well as the amount of profitability after that particular capacity, after that particular expenses in the respected capacity. So I'm taking the question for your concerns, and this time I'm taking the problem for you from the assignments part, problem number 6, the last problem which I'm going to discuss from your assignment part, and that is the budgeted output of industry specializing in the production of one product at the optimum capacity of 6,400 units. That means that if they are going to utilize the complete capacity, optimum utilization, then their capacity production would be 6,400 units per annum and amounted to rupees 1,76,048 rupees as the total amount of expenditures of the manufacturing of 6,400 units. Their informations are given in the bracket. After the bracket, the information in the bracket is given regarding the expenditure on bifurcation of that 1,76,048. But after the bracket, the company decides to have a flexible budget, a production target of 3,200 and 4,200 units. So, which you are going to see above the table, if you are going to see the 6,400 units were manufactured, and that 6,400 units, it's a full of capacity. And regarding that 6400 units, the total amount of expenditure mentioned in the particular table, that the expenditures were divided into different heads, and then they asked to prepare a different production capacity. They were asked for two different production capacity. One is 3200 units, what would be the changes, and in case of 4800 units manufacturing capacity, what would be the changes of a total expenditures. Actual quantity proposed to be produced being left, and that is not exactly concerned here at present, right? So they were actually asking the informations regarding the two projection on the basis of if they manufactured with the full capacity. Still they are not manufacturing with the full capacity, that is what we assumed it. Prepare a flexible budget for production level of 50% capacity and 75% capacity. It means that they were asking to prepare the flexible budget 50% capacity. That means the 6400 capacity, it's a full capacity, and they ask for two. One is 3200, that is 50%, and the other is 4800, that is 75%. Selling price per unit is maintained at rupees 40 per unit. At present they have a 40 rupees selling price, and they are going to maintain this selling price in remaining part also. They asked indicate the effect of net profit. So that means they asked to find out what amount of changes of net profit. Administrative, selling and distribution expenses contributed rupees 3600. It is remain same, fixed. So admin, selling and distribution expenses considered as a fixed expenses and remain same in case of the respected changes. So now we'll have to prepare a flexible budget for three concerns. One is a 100% capacity, which information is already given in the question, and comparative statements for 50% and 75% of capacity. In case of